Hello everyone, this is part 7 of What If Naruto Joined the Teen Ants, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. The HIVE headquarters collapsed before them in rubble and smoke. Slade hadn't got out, they knew that, though, they doubted he was S. Not every member of HIVE had been quick enough to get out of the underground building before it collapsed, and for that the ants were sorry. M was not their preferred punishment of criminals. But to be honest, they were just glad that none of their friends and fellow ants had been badly hurt, except for Naruto. Naruto held Raven in his arms, tightly hugging her to his body. Hey! Cyborg shouted at someone behind them. Naruto stood up and looked over. He watched as Jinx ran away into an alleyway. Cyborg made to chase after her, but Naruto stopped him. Let her go, he said calmly. Where is she? This does not make sense, she should be here. Starfire called out as she searched around for someone. Robin and the others approached her. Who are you looking for? Robin asked, sounding concerned. My dearest sister, she is supposed to be here. I do hope she wasn't left inside. Starfire crouched down on the ground and began to weep a little. Naruto placed a hand on her shoulders. Don't worry, when I was there I didn't see her. I don't think she was in the HIVE during all of this. I'm sure she's fine. Naruto consoled. Starfire wiped her tears and gave Naruto a hug. He braced himself for the crushing of bones, but it never came. Her hug was soft and warm. Gentle even. He hugged back. A small clearing of tea came from behind him. He stopped hugging Starfire and turned around to see Raven tapping her foot. He wondered if she had been jealous of the hug, but this was dismissed when a slight smile played across her lips. He approached her and treated the gray-skinned girl to a gentle kiss and hug. It had all been set. The HIVE had been taken down, quite literally. Raven had mastered the spell they'd need to open the portal. All there was now was to say goodbye. Naruto, however, decided that such goodbyes would have to last a whole day. So he would be going home tomorrow. All the HIVE members had been arrested. Jinx was still nowhere to be found and Blackfire had continued to be absent. This still bothered Starfire a little, but she didn't let it control her chance to have fun with Naruto. Once again she took him on a shopping spree and racked up the ants' bills by buying almost everything in the store and having to send it back on more than one occasion. Naruto knew one thing, he wouldn't be wearing his orange jumpsuit for a while. Once again, the fangirls chased him. But when he met Raven uptown, they soon stopped. After all, not many can stand up to a four-red-eyed half-demon girl from an alternate reality. Naruto chuckled at the thought. He wanted to say goodbye to everyone he'd met so far, but for some reason, he wasn't in any rush. He decided he'd much rather spend as much time with Raven as possible. Nighttime came around and Naruto took Raven to a spot in the city he knew of. It was the forest. The same forest he had first arrived in. Together they stood on the bank looking over at the sparkling lights of Jump City. Naruto had been here a whole of 2 months. And in that time he had learned about a great many things, pizza being one of them. But he also found a change in himself. He had not only found love, because he truly knew he loved Raven, but he had found a sort of peace he hadn't known back in Konoha. He knew he hadn't joked for a while, he knew he was more serious and calm. He'd changed. He hoped it was for the good. After looking back on his life, Naruto realized there were far too many times when he should have put jokes aside and done the task at hand. It was strange that he realized this now. Some of them back home would probably say he had finally grown up, he didn't think so. He just thought he had a different outlook on life. And he thought that he preferred this one. Naruto s his arm around Raven's shoulder and pressed her close to him. The water glistened in the light of the full moon and the stars. The tall buildings of Jump City looked ghostly and ominous in nature against the blackness of the night. Everything was peaceful. Everything was perfect. But it couldn't last. Naruto knew it. As he sat there with his arm around Raven, her body pressed so close to his that he could feel her heartbeat run through her body as they both watched the sparkling calm water before them, Naruto was overcome with a dark depression. He had to leave. If given the choice, he would have stayed. He was liked here. He was respected. He was loved. But he didn't have a choice. He couldn't forsake Konoha. He couldn't leave it unprotected. He knew what he would do. He would go back. He would. Naruto would go back and destroy all those that would threaten the village, then he would return to stay with the ants. But how long would it take? How long would each threat and enemy take to find? How long would each take to defeat? How long would he be without Raven? This thought alone terrified him. The girl beside him sensed his unease and looked him in the eyes. She didn't say a word. She just leant forward and kissed him. In that one moment all of his worries were lifted. Beast Boy had been trying to pluck up the courage for about an hour now. It was strange. Before, this very thought would give him strength, that he would one day be able to do this or say these words, but right now he was kinda terrified of the thought. But he had to. He had waited far too long for this moment. He had to tell Terra how he felt. Beast Boy opened the doors from the corridor into the main living room. Terra was sat on the couch flicking through the channels in an idle boredom that seemed to be her companion as of late. Beast Boy walked past her to the TV and turned it off. What was that for? She asked. She didn't sound angry or hurt, probably because she hadn't been watching anything in the first place. I wanna talk to you. Beast Boy said. He began scratching the back of his head in nervousness. He began trying to say the words. Just say them. They're only words, you idiot. Just say it. He screamed at himself in his own head. Beast Boy took a deep breath. Terra, he began. Terra was listening intently. Do you wanna have cupcakes? He hit himself on the head. What? Terra asked, feeling confused. No, that isn't what I wanted to ask. He blurted out. Well then, what is it? She asked. Beast Boy took a few deep breaths and managed to compose himself. The green youth let a flowing calm wash over him. He kept his head low and closed his eyes. Terra, he began. Ever since I met you I thought you were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. He said this in a manner that was more of an explanation than any form of admittance. For a long time since you've been back I've wanted to ask you out. I was wondering whether you wanted to be my girlfriend. But I realize that isn't what I want. I want something more. I don't like you in that way, it's much more than that. What I'm trying to say is, Terra. He looked up into her eyes. I love you. An eerie silence passed between them. I'll go to my room now, he said. He slowly began to walk away. Beast Boy was soon in his room and feeling angry with himself. He hit his fists on the wall. Stupid, stupid, he yelled at himself over and over again. He slowly slid down the wall in exhaustion and defeat. A small tap at his window met his ears. Beast Boy turned around and almost fell over in shock. Terra stood on a rock that was floating in the air outside of his window. She had a smile on her face. Beast Boy and Terra soon found themselves back at the theme park they had once attended together. Although back then, Slade had interfered and Terra had betrayed them. The green youth thought that the theme park would be uncomfortable and bring back memories that he truly didn't want. But it didn't. It offered a peaceful atmosphere, and after the whole ordeal with the HIV, he needed just that. Once again they rode the Ferris wheel. Throughout it all they didn't speak once. It was not an uncomfortable silence, but more that neither of them had much to say. It seemed the time they spent together, and the actions they undertook spoke louder than any words ever could, especially when they were in the Ferris wheel and they had just reached the top. The lights of Jump City sparkled in the night and the stars twinkled in response. It was perfect. It seemed that everyone in the tower was attempting to stay up as though tomorrow everything would fall apart. For everyone else, no. But for Naruto and Raven, it was kinda the truth. So the two made a point of spending as much time together as possible. They even met up in the city once. Naruto had been being chased by the usual hordes of fangirls. The moment Raven turned up, they ran. After all, how many fangirls can take on an interdimensional half-demon girl with the power of pure darkness and 4 glowing red eyes? The answer, none. Unfortunately though, that which has a beginning has an end. And their time was up. The ants gathered in the living room. Dear friend Naruto, do you have to go? Why can you not stay? Starfire pleaded. Naruto looked at the ground. Raven, who sat next to him, gently grasped his hand and gave it a reassuring squeeze. Naruto looked the others in the eyes one by one. You have to understand. My hometown of Konoha is constantly under attack. I want to stay, but I can't leave it undefended. I won't. He stated this firmly as though his decision would never sway. I'm going back there for one reason. I'm going to destroy everyone that poses a threat to Konoha. And then I'm coming back, to live with Raven and you guys. He added this last part with a smile played on his lips. The ants, it seemed, let out a breath in relief that they each had been holding. So, how long will you be gone? Robin asked casually. Well, Naruto began. Let's see. There's Pain, Orochimaru, maybe a few hundred others. I'd say, about 3 years. He said casually. Just then, the realization hit like a 50-ton steamroller smacking him over the head. 3 years without Raven. His mind was in pieces. He fainted. Naruto, dude, you okay? Cyborg asked as he began to shake the boy gently. Naruto slowly came to. He opened his eyes and slowly sat up, rubbing his head. What happened? Robin asked. Just the thought of not being with Raven for 3 years. Naruto shrugged. The room was silent. Robin and Cyborg burst into hysterics. Their laughter echoed throughout the building as they chortled their amusement. Soon Naruto was laughing with them. Yes, today had been a good day, but it would soon come to an end. This thought dulled Naruto's laughter to a dreary silence, and before long he found himself back in his own room alone whilst staring up at the ceiling. He was sad. He truly didn't want to leave, but he couldn't just abandon Konoha. When he had been first captured and attacked, he had thought that he'd simply find a way out and to immobilize or escape the Akatsuki as he always did, not that they'd use their chakra to form a link between them and him and try and drain Kyuubi's chakra and life force, and in doing so giving Kyuubi a way to absorb them and K them all easily and transport him and Kyuubi into another dimension. The thought of it made Naruto's head hurt. A knock at his door awoke him from his thoughts. Come in. He replied to the knock. Raven walked into his room and approached his bed. Naruto let her take him by the hand back into her own room. There they fell asleep in each other's arms, silent and content. Naruto woke up. The feel of Raven's body snuggled closely up to his tempted him to once again to delve into an earthly slumber, but he knew he had to get up. He wanted to spend his last day with Anne's awakened smiling, not frowning and due to bad dreams while he slept. It seemed that his night had been interrupted many a time due to unfortunate dreams of such a like. Dreams of him and Raven leaving each other forever, or dreams of a great battle in a fiery void. He dreamt he had himself to save everything he loved. When he thought about it, it was an appealing prospect, not the whole part, but the whole reason for doing so. When he truly thought about it, if he ever were to he would want it to be in battle, protecting the ones he loved. Naruto pulled himself from the soft mattress and flung the covers aside. He blushed. It seemed he had actually taken off his clothes before going to bed, although he couldn't remember doing so. When he looked at Raven, he felt himself begin to blush furiously. She was lying there in nothing but a see-through nightgown in which he could plainly see the back of her bra strap and panties. How they had both ended up dressed like this, he had no idea. He himself was only wearing a pair of shorts. Rapidly, he began to get dressed. Halfway through putting on his black ninja bottoms, made out of a Kevlar-type fabric that Cyborg had made for him, Raven began to wake up. She rolled over and looked at him. Naruto, she said slightly dreamily. Ah, Raven, he began but lost his balance. Naruto tumbled to the floor and had to struggle to finish putting on the bottoms. He then stood up. Raven chuckled. You can call me Rachel, you know, she said in a light tone. She seemed so much different. Her eyes sparkled with mischief and were no longer guarding a well of emotions. When he had first saw her, she had been dark, a lot like Sasuke. She had been almost completely dreary and emotionless, but now she smiled a lot. She laughed and chuckled like a young girl should. It was as if she was a totally different person. And he knew it was all because of him. He tried not to admit such a thing to himself for fear of sounding vain to himself. But he had to admit it because it was true. He had changed her. There were girls back home that he would to change the attitude of, to get him to notice him with something other than scorn or malice. Naruto truly believed Raven loved him. And he was so glad that he could give her the happiness she had never allowed herself to feel beforehand. Okay, well, Rachel, do you know why my clothes were gone? Naruto asked. And where are yours? He asked with a blush. Raven looked down at herself and back at Naruto. Well, last night it was hot. You were having a nightmare and you were sweating a lot. I took off your clothes. She said, looking at the floor in embarrassment. And your clothes? Naruto asked curiously with a red face at the subject. I was kinda hot too and I didn't think you'd mind, do you? She asked. A lump lodged itself in Naruto's tea and threatened to choke him, but he managed to force it down. Yes, I mean no, I mean yes, I mean, do I have to answer? He whined. Raven giggled. I'm joking, she said. Raven pulled herself from the bed and Naruto averted his eyes. The dark-haired girl shook her head at him. You can look, ya no. I'm not, she joked. Yep, she was defiantly different today. Naruto turned to look at her and he felt like his head was about to explode from the heat that rushed into his cranium. Raven approached him and hugged him softly. Their lips met and once again, Naruto's blush and thoughts and worries about everything swam away as he closed his eyes and melted into the sweet K. They separated and Naruto noticed that Raven was now dressed in her robe, which was obviously now white due to her touching him. How? He began. My powers. Now shut up and get dressed, I want breakfast and you're gonna make it. She said, throwing his black top at him. He caught it with ease and gave her a puzzled look. Why am I making it? He asked. Because I said so. She gave him a simple smile and disappeared in a black portal before him. Naruto was left feeling a little worried. He thought about the way she had been acting. It had been provocative, dominating, little girlish and human. Naruto thought he preferred her the other way, strangely. Naruto met the other Ans in the living room. They all looked at him expectantly and with sad eyes. Naruto knew they were all thinking the same thing, because he was too. Today's the day I leave. Suddenly he was grabbed by the arm. Raven glared at the others. Stop looking so sad, please. She asked them. I don't want any sad faces today, even if he's leaving. She said this, her voice slowly changing back to its normal crackling one as the depression surrounds her. Quickly she buried the depression and forced Naruto into the kitchen. Breakfast, now, she ordered. Why are you making him make breakfast? Robin asked Raven. Raven shrugged. It keeps him occupied, and I'm hungry. She replied simply. Raven, are you okay? Beast Boy asked behind her. Raven turned around and greeted him with a broad smile. Why wouldn't I be? She said, her voice was a little crackly around the edges. Well, you're perky and happy. I know you've been different lately, but this is a completely new you. He said, he was a little bit cautious with his words. Probably out of fear. Raven looked at all of them and saw the same thing in their eyes. She began. I thought. Her voice cracked. A dark atmosphere emanated from her and she suddenly burst into tears. A lamp exploded and she flew through a portal she opened up in the ceiling, obviously going to the roof. I'll go after her, Naruto said. He jumped over the parrion and headed for the door. Beast Boy grabbed his arm and stopped him. Dude, no offense, but maybe you shouldn't. I think Starfire should go and talk to her. The green boy said, looking over at Starfire. The Tamaranian nodded sternly and flew off through the door. Starfire opened the door of the roof and looked around. Raven sat cross-legged on the floor chanting over and over again, Azurath Metrian Zintos. She spoke the words in a crackled voice that still halted in between sniffles. She obviously wasn't able to concentrate. Her chants were crackled and she wasn't even floating. She was wiping her eyes constantly and sniffling her misery as the tears poured out. Oh my dear friend Raven. Why are you so upset when before you were so disturbingly happy? Starfire asked as she sat down next to the sobbing girl. Raven collapsed in Starfire's arms while the orange-skinned girl held her simply. Raven sat there crying for quite a while. It was amazing that nothing had blown up or anything. But then again, there wasn't that much stuff to blow up anyway. After all, they were on a roof. Unless the tower itself went up in smoke, they were relatively safe. Slowly Raven began to calm down. I'm sorry, she said in her usual gravely voice. I wanted to be different. I wanted to be happy and a different person for his last day, but I messed it up. She looked at Starfire pleadingly. I don't want him to go. She yelled as she burst into another round of tears. The sound of the roof door's open met their ears. They turned to see Naruto walking towards them. Naruto struggled against Robin and Cyborg as they tried to stop him going to Raven. Rachel, he called. Sit down, man, Starfire can handle it. Cyborg tried to console. Naruto stopped struggling for a second and the two let go with a sigh of relief. Suddenly Naruto was off, leaving them kicking themselves at letting the guard down. Naruto ran up the stairs and rushed through the roof door, causing it to open loudly as he barricaded through. Raven looked at him for a moment before rushing up to him and hugging him tightly as she cried. Together they dropped to their knees in the sunlight as Raven cried her heart out. I don't want you to go. She sobbed. Naruto cupped her face with his hands and kissed her sweetly. I don't want to. But I have to, he explained whilst gazing into her eyes. I will be back. I promise, he said with whole honesty. The cool air of the city brushed Naruto's face and he couldn't help but stop to bask in it. He stood on a medium-sized building surrounded by the glistening towers that shone in the rays of the sunlight. Naruto couldn't help but close his eyes and revel in the feel of the surrounding area. He didn't know quite what it was, but there was something about this place that felt similar to Konoha. The more he thought about it, the more it slipped out of his reach. He knew how different it was, everything was different. The air was obviously not as clean as Konoha, and it often caused Naruto to feel a little ill. It was greatly bigger in every way and the technologies were nothing like what they had back home. He figured it out. That's what it was. Naruto thought about it for a second longer and figured that he was right. He knew what was similar, what was the same. They both felt like home. But there was something here that called to him greater than that of Konoha. That would be his gray-skinned beauty. His love. Suddenly, Naruto heard something. The tapping of feet. Obviously, with him being in a giant city, there were plenty footsteps to hear, but these were different. Familiar. Close. Naruto jumped sideways and just managed to avoid a blast of purple bolts. The moment he got up he had to dive again due to another O of bad luck magic. Jinx attacked again and again. Naruto managed to dodge them all at first but he was eventually hit and he flew off the edge. Jinx looked at where he had been and slowly approached. She peered over the edge of the building and saw the body of Naruto below on the tarmac, lifeless. It went up in a puff of white smoke. A blade was pressed against the back of her neck. She went stiff. The blade was removed and she was slowly turned around. Jinx stared into the eyes of Naruto and felt afraid. Naruto looked at her in confusion. Why did you attack me? He asked, scratching the back of his head. Especially after I let you go once the HIVE base was destroyed. Jinx grew angry. Because you lied to me. She screamed. You lied about who you were. And now you're with her. The pink-haired girl exclaimed. Naruto tried to think of something to say, so he thought it might as well be the truth. Listen, calm down for a moment and listen. Geez, why do girls always shout? He said, shaking his head. I lied because I had to. I already explained that to you if you remember. As for me and Raven, he paused. He looked at Jinx and could tell she was hanging on every word he said. I love her. Jinx noticeably stiffened at the words. Tears slowly welled up in her eyes and she collapsed to her knees and began to cry. More crying, great. He muttered sarcastically. I thought you liked me. Jinx blared. Naruto felt his heartstrings being pulled as he began to do what he really didn't want to. But he had to. If he wanted to be with Raven, he had to. Look, I do like you. He said. Jinx managed to slow her whimpering and look up at him. Naruto bent down and picked her to her feet. But I'm in love with her. He said softly. I don't wanna hurt you. That's the last thing I want. But I can't be with you while I love her. I'm sorry, I've been made to make a choice between you two, I had to pick her. Tears still fell from Jinx's cheeks, but her whimpering had stopped and she was now deathly quiet. Her eyes were wide, almost pleading. Naruto leaned down for a second and pecked the pink-haired girl's lips slightly before drawing back. That's just to remember me. Nothing more, he said to her softly. Jinx looked confused. What do you mean? She asked. Are you going somewhere? Naruto nodded. I'm going home. I'll be coming back, but not for a long time. Jinx hung her head and Naruto backed away. She looked up and saw him simply walking off. He took one last look at her before jumping off the side of the building. Jinx ran to the edge and looked down. Naruto stared back up at her from the street 20 stories below. He gave her a slight wink and walked off. It was almost time. In barely an hour he would be going home. Naruto lay on Raven's bed with the girl's arms wrapped around him. Rachel, he asked softly. Raven looked up at him. Yes, she answered. Will you wait for me? He asked sincerely. Raven nodded simply. I will, I promise. She looked a little distant for some reason. Are you okay? He asked. No, she replied softly. But I've got something for you. She reached over him and opened up her bedside table. She brought out a small black box wrapped in a red ribbon. Naruto took it from her and felt his fingertips tingle as he touched it. He reached for the ribbon. Raven's hand stopped his and held it fast. Not yet. I want you to open it once you're gone. And think of me when you do. She said with a single tear running down her cheek. Rachel Roth, he began. You don't understand, I will always be thinking of you. He leaned down and pressed his lips to hers. Naruto would like to have said that it was almost time, unfortunately, it was time. The blonde-haired ninja stood in the living room with the other ants as he said his goodbyes. Each one gave him a gift. Robin gave him a communicator, though it wouldn't work in the other world, it was mainly for memory. Starfire allowed him to keep the Tishma, this he greatly enjoyed as he knew it would come in handy. Cyborg gave him some new armor. It was black, flexible, and made of Kevlar by weave, so it was incredibly strong. It didn't have any technology in it because Naruto didn't want any. Terra hadn't known Naruto that long, so she really couldn't give him anything. She did, however, give him her thanks. This, Naruto had said, was worth more than anything else she could give. When it came to Beast Boy, the group had thought it would be a pizza or a joke or something along those lines. But instead it was something completely different. It surprised everyone. It was a weapon. Beast Boy had given him a sliver gauntlet that had a hidden retractable needle-thin blade. What really pleased Naruto was the design on the top of the blade. It was the symbol of the hidden leaf. The symbol on Naruto's headband. The symbol of Konoha. Naruto felt overwhelmed by this. He rushed at the green boy and embraced him tightly. He had received great gifts from all of them, ravens he had yet to open, but he knew it would be the best, or at least, he hoped. Naruto turned to Robin. So how am I getting back? He asked. Robin smiled. Raven's going to open a portal. He said simply. Naruto turned to Raven. Not that I'm complaining, but why couldn't you do that before? He asked her. Raven was upset, of course, about this whole situation, but she currently forced her emotions away so as not to make a scene. I can travel through dimensions, but only if I know what they feel like. Each dimension has its own signature feeling. I didn't know yours, but now I do, she explained dryly. How? He asked. Your headband. Cyborg scanned it and found some residual elements from your own world. Using this I can find it with my powers. Naruto almost jumped for joy. That means you can all come with then. He said happily. No, we can't, Naruto. Robin protested. Why not? Naruto asked sadly. Because just like you protect Konoha, we protect Jump City. We can't leave, Robin explained. Naruto nodded his head understandingly. Raven walked up to him and they gazed into each other's eyes for what seemed like an eternity. I love you, he said softly. I love you too, she answered. Their lips met and once again Naruto felt like he would give anything just to stay. Anything but Konoha. He would give anything but Konoha. They parted softly and Naruto saw tears streaming down Raven's face. She turned away and pressed her hands together. Azurath Metrion Zinthos, she exclaimed. She spread her hands wide and a rush of wind swept from somewhere. A large black void opened up. Raven turned around. Just walk in, you'll be home, she said. Raven began walking away, but Naruto ran up to her and grabbed her. He pressed his lips to hers fiercely and held her tight. When they parted, Raven was breathing heavily and seemed to be in a world of her own. She was also blushing. I love you, Rachel Roth, nothing will ever change that. He turned back to the ants and smiled. Thank you. He turned around and walked into the void. Raven watched him go and the void collapsed. She burst into tears as she felt as though a part of her soul had been ell away. The house shook with her grief and lights and electrical objects of all manner exploded around her. Naruto felt a compressing feeling around his body and a splitting bolt of pain through his head. He couldn't see anything, probably because he screwed his eyes closed. He hit something hard and the wind was knocked out of him. He opened his eyes. A canopy of familiar-looking trees greeted his vision. A single eagle swooped by in the bright blue sky and Naruto knew he was home. He picked himself up and began to walk. He no longer felt any pain, in fact, he felt peace. A determination. He would find Sasuke, he would destroy all those that would threaten Konoha, and then he would go back to Raven. Naruto exited the forest and stood looking off into the distance. He was on a cliff. Before him lay Konoha, the village of the Hidden Leaf. He was truly home. Naruto suddenly remembered Raven's present. He took out the black box and once again felt the strange tingling in his fingertips. He gazed at the box for a moment or two before reaching up with his right hand and pulling lightly on the ribbon. The box opened and the sides fell down, revealing the object. It was a necklace made of a strange silvery metal that felt like silk in his fingers. A large purple jewel hung on it and a note sat beside it. He picked it up. It said, "Dear Naruto, I want you to know that I love you with all my heart. You are everything I hold precious to me and I will eagerly await your return. Thank you for showing me a life of happiness. I wish I could return the favor, but I know I never will. For you have done for me more than you know, and more than I can ever repay. This jewel was made by me, as was its chain. When danger is near, the chain will change to a coarse metal, and the jewel will change its color to red. I hope it will come and use my love. Yours forever. Rachel." Naruto stared at the note for a moment. He pressed the paper to his sea protectively before folding it up and slipping it inside the sleeve of the gauntlet that Beast Boy gave him. He placed the necklace around his neck and looked out at Konoha. "It's time, Kit," he heard at the back of his mind. "I think we're going to have a lot of fun. Did you do as I instructed?" A dark and gravely voice sounded out. "I did, Master. Naruto Uzumaki never knew I knew of him. He doesn't even realize I tipped off Slade to his Idini when he played the role of Shadow," said the dark purple-haired girl. "Excellent. You have served me well. Now, you will follow him to his world. There you will lure him to gain what I need. Should you succeed, you will know more power and wealth than you could ever dream," the voice said. The purple-haired girl smiled sinisterly. She stopped smiling and suddenly panicked a little. "But wait," she called. "What if he attacks me? I'm no match for him. And how am I going to get there? What if—" Silence. The voice boomed out, halting her speech instantly. "I will grant you your power," he shouted, "but only a taste. You will receive but a quarter of the power I shall bestow upon you if you succeed. He will be no match. I will open a portal to his world." A large fireball flew at her and she ducked. The ball erupted on the wall and exploded into a dark red portal. Suddenly, fire rained down on her and surrounded her. Burning heat spread through the girl's body and she tried to scream in pain, but found that she could not. Suddenly it stopped, and she felt good. She looked at her right hand and clenched her fist. A bright red flaming aura surrounded her fist and shone with incredible power. She grinned. "Now go, Blackfire, and bring me what I seek," the voice commanded. Blackfire bowed to the Oni before her and said, "Thank you, Master Trigon. I will not fail you." To be continued. Dreams and visions erupted in his mind. Thoughts of fire, and screams of pain, even death. Something was coming. Something was here. Naruto woke up abruptly. His body was sodden with perspiration, his heart beat loudly in his ears, and his breath came in sharp gasps. The dreams had been affecting him more and more. They never stopped. Usually he would simply try and dismiss them, but he couldn't. He was afraid. That which made Naruto grasp onto these visions so tight was a feeling. It was a feeling that he could easily describe, yet find no logical reason for its source. It was the feeling of being real. He couldn't explain it, but he felt as though these dreams weren't dreams at all, as though they were warnings. Naruto pushed the thoughts out of his mind and looked around him. He had been wandering the forest edges of Konoha for the past 4 days. Naruto lay there on the soft grass beneath a small clearing in the canopy of trees above. The stars twinkled back at him and the night air gently caressed his face with a light breeze. He was calm. He noticed that there was the slightest tint of red to the edges of the sky. Morning was coming. Naruto picked himself up to his feet and commenced the same action he had undertaken every morning since he had been home. He pushed his way through the foliage and looked out at the small fire lights of Konoha. The town gazed back at him as though it harbored eyes of its own. He longed to go there. But he couldn't. I can never go back, he said to himself. Those that would attack it come from the outside. If I go back, I would only find it harder to leave. He said this to himself as though for reassurance. He had recited this exact mantra every morning, as though to remind himself of his task. He set off. Naruto decided to head north. Once again Naruto stuck to the edges of the forest. He had noticed himself unconsciously doing this as he traveled. It was as if his body wanted to stay as close to Konoha as possible. He forced himself to turn deeper into the forest. It was dangerous staying on the border. Fellow ninjas often trained or explored there. If he were caught, it would complicate anything. Naruto walked for many hours. In the past he would have merely ran along the branches of the trees, but in the unworld, he had found a sort of peace that came from walking. It was that which he currently sought after. That peace. It came slowly but surely, washing over him and removing all troubled thoughts. All except one, Raven. Or, Rachel, as he was used to calling her now. Naruto tried to force the image of her face out of his mind, but the more he tried, the clearer the image was. A familiar ache struck him hard and he once again felt like he would rather live this life without her. It was painful to be away. He had never thought that merely missing someone could cause him pain, but it did. The very thought of her sent him weak, and the idea that he may never see her again, it was all but unbearable. 3 hours had passed and the sky above the canopy of trees had lightened due to the rising sun. He had now delved deep enough into the forest that he could no longer hear any sounds from the waking village of the hidden leaf. Birds twittered in the sky and the sweet smell of flowers perfumed the air around him. It also seemed a little damp, fresh, as though a storm had ended. Possibly only a few days ago, maybe just before he had returned. He had yet to meet anyone from the village and for that he was than. He stopped. Naruto stood as still as any tree as he listened to his surroundings. Someone was there. The tiniest sound reached his ears. The swish of a single leaf, the swish of air as something through it. A kunai. Naruto jumped and barrel rolled. In the air, as he rolled, he managed to catch the kunai in between his index and middle finger. Once he landed, he used the momentum from his jump to throw the kunai back. The blade flew into the tree's canopy of leaves from whence it came. A figure dived out of the vegetation and landed on the ground a few meters away, rolling to break its fall. Naruto looked. It was one of the Anbu. The cat-like mask stared back at him. A brown robe flowed around the figure's shoulder. The Anbu reached inside its cloak, separating it for a second, revealing a lithe male body, and drew out dual tantos. Naruto looked at the blades and then at the figure's mask. The Anbu certainly meant to use them. This didn't make sense. The Anbu were the protectors of Konoha, much like a police force. Why would they attack him? Unless they didn't know it was him. Naruto glanced down at his clothes. They weren't his after all. His hair was probably still a shade or two lighter than its original color from when it had been dyed white. He was wearing black instead of his usual orange jumpsuit, and his eyes, Naruto obviously couldn't see them himself, but he knew they'd be different. After all, he was different. He felt it, he knew it. It wasn't any surprise the Anbu didn't know who he was. He wanted to tell the Anbu to wait, that he was from Konoha, but Naruto realized, he couldn't. If he told the Anbu who he was or that he was from Konoha, the Anbu might want to take him into custody. And while he ached to see his friends again, to see the beautiful buildings, the people, the monuments, the ramen, he couldn't. He could never go back. The Anbu dived. His arms were crossed so his blades were facing opposite directions. When the masked attacker close, he out with both blades in a scissor motion. Naruto dodged back and retrieved his blade from his back. The ceremonial tishma gleamed in the sunlight as it was drawn. Its dual-bladed fire shape seemed to glow red in the radiance of the early day. The Anbu spun and swung his tantos in an attempt to Naruto's stomach. Naruto swung the tishma down and caught the Anbu's blade in between the tishma's dual blades. Naruto spun the tishma, causing the Anbu's tantos to fly out of their master's hands and up into the air. The Anbu jumped and kicked Naruto in the sea, using him like a wall to kick off of into the air. The Anbu caught one of his blades whilst the other fell and stuck in the ground point first. Naruto's attacker again. Naruto defended the blow and attempted to counter with to the Anbu's head. The masked figure ducked and made to thrust his blade into Naruto's sea. Naruto sidestepped and spun around his opponent. Whilst he span, he struck the Anbu on the back with a backhand, causing him to stumble forward and his tanto to strike the tree in front of him, embedding its sharp blade into the bark. Naruto placed the tishma against the Anbu's teeth, causing the masked attacker to stiffen at the cold touch of the metal. Naruto was about to speak when the Anbu slipped. The masked figure's feet slipped out from underneath him and the Anbu's head and teeth slipped from Naruto's grasp. As the Anbu fell, he used his feet to grab the handle of his tanto that was still embedded in the tree bark. He landed on the floor and pulled the blade from the tree and thrust the handle into Naruto's stomach, knocking him back. The Anbu, somehow, spun the tanto in his foot's grasp so that the blade faced Naruto. The masked attacker spun on the floor and thrust the blade at Naruto point first. Naruto dodged backwards quickly as the Anbu dropped the blade into his hands and flipped up from the ground, flourishing the blade at Naruto. Naruto defended the blow with the tishma, but the tanto got close enough to cause a nasty C on his arm. The Anbu delivered a swift kick to the side of Naruto's head, sending him keeling to the ground. The masked attacker ran for his other blade that was stuck in the ground only a few meters away. Once the Anbu had reacquired his blade, he ran at Naruto and jumped. Naruto just managed to see this in time. The Anbu came down, points first. Naruto rolled to the left and thrust up his feet. The Anbu's blades barely missed him, but Naruto's feet didn't. They struck the Anbu's face, causing the attacker to fly backwards and strike the ground hard on his back. Naruto jumped up to his feet and watched as the Anbu struggled to get up. Supporting himself on one hand, the Anbu clutched his mask, which now bared a large crack down its surface. One half of the mask fell away and a green-eyed, black-haired youth looked back at him. Barely older than himself. The Anbu shoved his blades back into their sheaths and scampered into the forest. Naruto let him go. It was only now, after the attack, that Naruto became aware of a sharp pain in his arm. He looked down and saw a small C through the fabric. The mane of Naruto's armor was a Kevlar weave, but he had been unlucky. The Anbu had struck some of the fabric for the joints that wasn't Kevlar. Just his luck that on his first fight back, the enemy strikes a weak point. Naruto sighed and clutched his other hand to the wound, attempting to stop the B. It wasn't a bad C, not very deep, but it still hurt. Naruto reattached the tishma to his back and carried on. If he stayed, he'd surely be attacked again. The Anbu didn't give up, but when they needed reinforcements, they got them. And the thought of having to face an entire group of Anbus, well, it didn't bode well. Naruto set off. Naruto didn't know how long he had been walking, or how far. He had lost track a few hours ago and now he simply couldn't be bothered to think about it. He passed through a bush and came to a halt. He was on a cliff overlooking a large waterfall to his right. Naruto looked left and saw that he had somehow walked in an arch and up a hill, because now Konoha sat on his right below him a few miles away, surrounded by the dense forest. Naruto looked at the village and his heart felt like it would burst. He could never go back there. This knowledge had begun to haunt his mind more and more as he had walked. He could no longer be a part of Konoha, he could no longer know his friends, he could no longer strive to become Hokage, he could no longer be a ninja of the Hidden Leaf Village. Naruto reached up and removed his headband. He looked at it sorrowfully and slowly traced the leaf insignia with his index finger. The surface was rough and scratched from years of use. Its band was worn and frayed in places. To many it would just be a headband to protect one's head in combat, but to Naruto, it was something more. It was his life, his reminder to himself that he was a ninja. That he belonged to something that no one could take away. It was recognition. It was meaning. It was irreplaceable and his alone to understand, to live by, and only he could throw it away. Only he could forsake it. But it had already been forsaken. The moment he had decided that he would return to the world, he had forsaken everything else. His life, his passion, his dream, all for love. It seemed unfair to him, that to retain love, one has to rest everything else. Naruto gripped his headband in his left hand and held it over the waterfall. The roaring water pounded against the rocks and the forest pool below. Light sprays spat at him, causing his eyelids to flicker in reaction. Naruto ignored all this and continually stared at his headband, his symbol. He took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. Naruto knew what he had to do. If he truly wanted to be with Raven, if he truly wanted love above everything else, and if he truly wanted to move forward in his life, he had to first leave his old life behind. A strange calm fell over him. A small smile crept on his lips. Not out of happiness, but out of something else, realization. Everything has a price, he said to himself. Even love. He dropped the headband. The metal and fabric protection gear flew from Naruto's hand and dropped swiftly down the cliff. It seemed as though even in the act of falling, the headband offered a symbol. A symbol of change. A symbol of new life. A symbol of a verse rebirth. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.